be heading into summer with a conversation called We Are the Church, which is a repeat conversation around here. I think we keep coming back to it over and over and over again. It's just kind of look at like, what is the church and what does it mean to gather together? What's Eastwind all about? And we're going to kind of walk our way through all of that, 3 weeks of that. And then we'll head into the summer and we're going to spend a few weeks going back to what we call practicing the way, looking at some of the disciplines that have been part of the Christian life throughout history. The thing that I was kind of leaning into as I came into today was this idea about being known. All right, it's kind of a heavy way to jump into a conversation, but it was this idea about, okay, maybe I'd pose it this way. When was the last time that you felt like you were in a space, it could be right now this morning, that you felt known? You're like there's people who just, they get me. They know my heart. They know my struggles. When I say the things that are on my mind, they hear it the way I intend it. And I was thinking through that question because you might be here this morning going, oh yeah, like right now, I feel known. But my guess is I could also ask you to raise your hand if you feel unknown, even by the people who love you the most. And a lot of hands will go up in the room, not as a judgment or not as an accusation, but just as a reality. When I was going through grad school, one of the modules we went through was mentoring. And looking at mentoring history, relationships, dynamics, and a question came up, and this kind of became a very vulnerable class. And the question that came up was, like, what's something people assume about you? Now, you could play surface level with that, right? But I started thinking about it, and I got hit. I'm like, oh, this is something people don't know about me, and I've shared it here before. But when it became my turn to share, I realized, I said, look, I can come across, and after first service, when I said all this, I'm like, I sound like such a joker. I was like, I could come across like I'm really put together. And as I said that, I'm like, or maybe I don't. I don't know. But I go, I could come. If you hang out with me, you might be like, Carlos knows who he is, what his purpose is. He's well defined in his relationships. Like he kind of seems to be really, really stable and with it. And then I said, oh yeah, but what the people who even know me the most don't always know is how afraid I am that I'm going to drop all the balls I feel like I'm carrying, and everything's going to crash to the ground. That's kind of a wild feeling to carry with you in your life, right? That people count on you, you're reliable, you're dependable, until you're not, and then you ruin everything. Now, I don't walk through every day of my life carrying that anxiety with me, but when I thought about being known, I realized, I don't know if my wife, so I talked to Emily about that, and we started it's just something I was thinking about. And so I hold that in your mind, right? That being known is tricky. Now I want to rewind and talk about a little bit of my journey. So I become a follower of Jesus in my early adult life. And this is huge. It starts to change what being known looks like for me, all right? And I start to, I love Jesus. I can't believe I get this new life and this experience of hope, and that he forgives me and he welcomes me and he brings me into his family. And I was loving everything about it. But then Jesus did something I really was not prepared for. He's basically said, hey, Carlos, see all of these people. In this case, I'm up here looking out at you. It's like these people around you, these other people who are in this Christian family. Guess what? I also want you to say yes to them. And this struck me. Because I thought, okay, I barely know being known is tricky. I say yes to Jesus. It's beautiful and it's wonderful and he's irresistible and he's magnanimous and it's amazing. And it means I also have to say yes to you. You're not as beautiful. You're not as wonderful. You're not as magnanimous. You kind of see the challenge that I ran into here. So what we're going to kind of roll into is, why is this so hard? Why can't I just be known? Why do I have to carry these anxieties around about my competencies and if I'm really who I think I am? And why can't you and I just interact and magic? We're connected. It's wonderful. I'm not talking about being friendly or polite or passing by each other in a good way. I'm saying committed, gritty, we are the church type of relationship. I think this is hard. So, that's going to be what we explore. I'm going to take an approach to it that's kind of interesting. I want to go back to the 1950s when a group of researchers started looking, all the therapists in the room, you have to forgive me for the next few minutes because I always hack my way through therapy here, right? But a group of researchers started looking at human connection, and they took a really common relationship that was very repeatable. They looked at children, infants, and they looked at their moms. And they wanted to see what happens in these relationships between moms and their babies. How does the baby respond when it feels scared or uncertain? What's going on in its nervous system that it feels that way? Do they reach for their mom or do they avoid their mom? Do they fall apart when their mom leaves the room? Do they calm down when she comes back? So they start to look at this particular relationship. And what they found, it's called attachment theory, but they said the way that you were loved or not loved as a child is still working in your relationships today. I want to overstate this. Because it's not my role, okay? I mean, we're a church. I want to point you to Jesus. We want to inspire each other to follow Jesus and deepen our faith and relationship with him. But we are all people. And my experience has been that this is very true. Even when I was going through foster certification, and one of the trainings was about like trauma-informed care, and they said, here's the challenge. We're learning as we walk through these dynamics is you could have the first year of your life receive nurture, care, connection, attachment as from 0 to 12. And then you could be abandoned for the next 15 years. And you could still be capable of forming healthy, attached relationships with other people. You could have the first year of your life be void of attachment and care. And then you could have 15 years of love poured into you. And you could have a really difficult time being attached. There's something about what happens within us. So I'm not a psychologist, right? I warned you on that. But it basically looks like this. There's different models to it. Some people cling in relationships. They hold too tight. They can become kind of suffocating. Other people keep everybody at a distance. That getting close feels dangerous, so you stay busy, or you stay independent, or you keep things at a surface level, even though others may not think it's a surface level. You know you're keeping it at a surface level. Some of us bounce back and forth between the two. We cling really tight and we push away. Others of us are very secure and attached. We don't necessarily, even what I'm talking about right now, you're like, that's just not my dynamic. But looking around the room, statistically, they say about 35 to 50% of us live in these types of dynamics, right? So I want to ask you a question. What do you think about attachment theory? Like, is it real? Does it play in your relationships? Is it garbage? What's your thought on it? Take a minute, turn to the person next to you. Do not counsel them, please. Just chat. We'll be back in 1 minute.
Been 2 summers since the handcuff called your name. You've been running, but you want somewhere to stay. Black bandana, but your face can't hide the pain. I'm not scared of all the things you're scared to say. I gotta know who you are. I gotta know who you are. I gotta need to call. Come on. And I got plenty of space inside my heart. Been forever since you felt like this again. If you stay, gotta keep your heart from caving in. I saw you at the Queensbridge pigeons. You don't wanna spend your night so long. I know you're in the background singing, but you can't go. You can't go.
All right, take 10 seconds. So for a few minutes, we're going to kind of make an assumption that human relationships are complicated and hard. And that it's challenging to be connected and well attached to people you love. Better yet, like kind of a random gathering of people. There's one author, thinker, pastor, Tim Keller. If you want to read in sort of the Christian world, he's a great person to read. Tim died a few years ago, but he quoted this, and it's something I share a lot at wedding ceremonies. But it's not really about weddings. It's about people. He said, to be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. And to be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. It's what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense. Hold on, look at this closing line. This is a dramatic claim. There is something that can liberate you from pretense. There is something that can humble you out of self-righteousness. And there's something that can fortify you for any difficulty life throws at us. I think what Tim's essentially saying is we want to be known and loved. We want to be attached. That's a pretty big assumption that all people need this type of foundation. But I could summarize all this 7 decades of psychological research around human connection. Bottom line that I would say is this. In my experience in life and in church and in my family and in my neighborhood, most of us are out here in life trying to build connections with others, but we're dealing with cracked foundations. And we wonder why it doesn't work out the way we hope it would. And I mean, even in the relationships we fight for and we invest in and we pour ourselves into, why isn't it easier? And what's remarkable is not that these researchers have come up with a solution. What I find remarkable is that you go all the way back to the beginning of Scripture, and there's already some conclusions offered about this challenge. So we're going to actually be in the book of Genesis for a little bit, looking at something essentially that says this is not a new problem, this is not a modern problem, this is a human problem, and God speaks into it. We'll be in Genesis chapter 2, but before we go into Genesis, I want to give some backstory. Where our church community, you can definitely belong before you believe. That's a journey people have as they walk through it. And Genesis is the first book in the Bible. It's a book of origins or beginnings. It's a book of purpose. So if that Bible in front of you, if you don't have a Bible, by the way, when you leave today at the guest services, there's a stack of Bibles. You can grab one as you go. We hope you would have one. But that first book, Genesis, it's one of 66 books that are all compiled in the Bible like a library. They have different genres, different authors, and they're all pulling the same thread. It's like, who is God? Who are we? What's broken? What's been done about it? All right, so Genesis kind of starts the whole thing. And in the first two chapters of Genesis, we learn about design, and we start to see that the questions that Genesis wants to answer for us are questions of like, why is there anything here at all? Not like, why am I here? Why is there anything here at all? And what does that mean? So it's about meaning, right? In those first two chapters, God builds and designs the world, and he calls it good. And everything's good. The sunset is beautiful, and the fish in the sea are good, and the trees on the land are good. Everything's good. And then there's a crowning achievement. The crowning achievement of the whole design is people. So it's not the hills out there, or it's not a weekend on a river fly fishing, or it's not getting away camping or being on the coast watching the sun come up or go down. The good thing in the whole design is you. It's me. It's the human being made to know God, made to know each other, built for a relationship from the very start. And then we'll hit Genesis 3, and it's like everything takes such a swift, dramatic turn. And I think the reason Genesis 3 matters in our conversation about connection is because it speaks to the diagnostic of why it's so hard to be human with other people. And we like other people, don't we? Like it's kind of, we want it to work. So when we read it today, like I'd encourage you, see a mirror, not something that's just telling, perspective on the world, but actually a mirror that's helping us diagnose challenges with being human. So Genesis chapter 2 is where we're going to start, 2 verse 18. And God's done all the creating, and it's all good, and it's all beautiful. And then he makes Adam the first human, all right? The first human's there, and he's in connection with all of this beautiful life, and he loves his job. All right? He's totally connected with God. I don't know how many of you want that, but a lot of us seek that. He is completely unhindered in his connection with his creator, God. He's never hot. He's never cold. No mosquitoes. I don't know when they came along in the whole story, but there's no mosquitoes, okay? Everything's perfect, except there's a problem. Adam looks around and he's like, man, I have everything except one thing. I don't have community. And it's this really interesting dynamic to think about. Because let me say, this should be my bottom line as a pastor. All you need is Jesus. That should be like the core message. All you need is a thriving relationship with God. You don't need purpose. You don't need a good job. You don't need a neighborhood. You don't need to be in love with somebody. You don't need family. All you need, Jesus is your boyfriend. Jesus is your girlfriend. Like that's all you need, right? Then you think about it and you go, yeah, except when all Adam had was full, complete, unfettered connection with God, he still went, I don't have everything I need. It's an interesting kind of tension we create when we think about how fulfilled we should be in our faith, and yet how Adam asked God for more. So Genesis 2:18, the Lord God said, it's not good for man to be alone. I'll make a helper suitable for him. I'll make a partner in this. I'll bring about community. It's the first time in all creation God says something is not good is when he sees that Adam doesn't have. And this is a very popular marriage conversation, but this is not only about marriage. This is about people. Adam doesn't have his people. So he creates them, and it is very good. And he looks at the man in the garden and the beautiful work and walking with God, and he says, I'm going to give you that thing because we are hardwired for connection. It's in us. Ignore this at your own peril. We are hardwired for human connection, not just to tolerate people. And that's the challenge a little bit, right? Is like, I'm just trying to get through the day and tolerate you or me or people around me. And I'm actually supposed to be connected, attached, healthy, to know you and to be known in return, to know you in return. And then, so this beautiful world starts up, and then Adam has it. It's there. He and Eve are in the garden, and community forms, and there's marriage, and there's family, and there's community, and there's life, and there's connection, and there's attachment. That's the first 2 chapters. And then we get to Genesis chapter 3, and I said it kind of takes a little bit of a turn. I'm going to walk through it kind of slowly, just so we can see what happens. Remember, diagnostic. That's what we're looking at here. But if you've ever wondered why closeness is hard, and why you keep people at a distance, or why someone you've tried to draw near to keeps you at a distance, why you can be in a room full of people and feel completely unknown. Talk about like church tension, right? I hope when you walked in the door, you felt kind of like, good vibe, seems friendly, coffee's definitely good. Nice smiles, like I'm sitting by someone, they seem okay, I don't feel threatened right now, and you came, so all of the things, like we want to be connected and we want you to be welcome here, except if we just had an honest moment and I said, can I see all of the hands of people who feel absolutely alone and isolated right now in this very room? Don't do that, please, but the hands that would go up. Hands would go up. Some of you might look at the person you came with, your friend or your spouse or your kids or your grandparents and go, wait, why'd they raise their hand? I thought they were awesome. Because connection's hard. So we're going to see why. Maybe that's the goal here as we jump into this. I want to show you what sin does. What it does to us, and it's not what you would expect. Like that sin causes a war or catastrophe or a tornado. It's deeply the casualties of sin are deeply relational. So what happens is Adam and Eve are enjoying their community, and God says, enjoy all of this except this one fruit. It's the knowledge of good and evil. You know, if you think about that feels like the one thing you shouldn't enjoy. Isn't that like, aren't we always about becoming aware of what's good, what's evil? We want to be on the side of good. And for some reason, though, God establishes this hierarchy where he says, you're not going to be able to carry that well. Trust me, I'll carry the knowledge of good and evil, and then you trust me. Well, the story says the serpent slithers up to Eve, and it's like, did God really say that that's a bad thing for you? And Eve's like, well, I don't know, it does look kind of tasty. And so Adam comes along, he's like, what are you doing? And he said, well, I think we could eat this. It looks good. I mean, did God really mean it would be that bad? Look how wonderful everything is. That's a very too fast overview of all of the beginning of Genesis for you right there. So they eat the fruit, which I'm convinced was not a kiwi, because I love kiwis. And it says in Genesis 3:7, then the eyes of both of them were opened. So what I'm getting at here is, why is it hard to be human? Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Before they did, the very first thing that happens in this moment of transgressing what God had said, don't trust that, trust me. The very first thing that happens is they realize they're naked and they're ashamed. And this isn't about like they were in the nudist colony and they modernized and decided to clothe themselves a little bit. This is about a soul level. They saw each other like they were completely known. And they went, oh crap. I can't be known like this. I can't be seen this way. They were at peace, and their peace is gone. So sin enters in, and the very first thing that happens is they look at each other and they cover themselves up. Diagnostic. Because attachment requires being seen. All the literalists in the room, keep your clothes on, please. Next thing that happens then, the pattern doesn't just stay in that moment. Genesis 3:8-10, right? It says, then the man and his woman heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of day. The Hebrew language is highly poetic, and it's painting a picture of something beautiful, cool day in the garden, God and people connected, walking in the cool of the day, and they hid from the Lord God amongst the trees in the garden. But the Lord God called to the man. He said, where are you? And he answered, I heard you in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. And I want to just pause for a moment. God's not asking, like, where are you? Like, head count, Adam, present. Eve, present. He's not looking for information. It's invitational. Where's my people? We were connected. We enjoyed the garden together. Where'd they go? And I think he's giving them a chance to say, God, we're right here. We thought we knew what was best. But that's not what they say, so we don't know. Because Adam's answer tells you everything about what sin does to us and why it's so hard to be connected. He says, I was afraid and I hid. So fear and hiding in relationships replaced trust and openness in relationships. And so the casualty of sin that we see is the person who loves you the most. God becomes the person you hide from the most. Look at Adam's response. He said, the wife you put me here with, just as a note right there, they've only been married who knows how long, okay? Let's process this thing. The wife you put me here with, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. Then the Lord God said to the woman, what is it you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate it. Just look at the structure of this moment really quick. It translates pretty well. Adam blames Eve and God in one sentence. He doesn't just say, Eve made me do it. The person that completed me, the community I needed, the attachment I had. He actually says, this all happened, God, because you gave her to me. You created this. That's a really interesting dynamic. He can't even throw his wife under the bus without Eve blaming God too. And then Eve, her opportunity is to say, all right, time out, everybody. But she looks, she scrambles, and she goes, well, it was the serpent that made me do it. And the third casualty of sin is that we turn on the people closest to us. So I think you should I would encourage you to have a working definition of sin or a working definition of what's wrong with the world. Unless you think there's nothing wrong with the world. I'd like to understand your framework for that. 3 effects of sin are just this, that we see from these few short chapters. Covering up, hiding from God, and blaming the person beside you. Think about how hard it is to really be connected to people, and which one of these 3 is always at play in that. Shame enters in, and intimacy has to run for it. And if you have a hard time letting people close, I guess I want to say from my perspective, right, that it's not a personality, like you're not the broken personality in the room. It's not I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert or I didn't have the right family growing up and you did, or there's more than that. It's let's call it like an echo of a very old, the original wound that we all carry. It's in the air and it's in the water. You can't just go out and fix it with some good self-work and some therapy. These are important things, but you can't just go repair it, because if you could, then this conversation would be like, why is he talking about connection? It's so easy peasy. I'm so connected. Everybody knows me. Everybody knows me deeply. I know everybody deeply. I just don't think that's the case. So I want to encourage you and just say, you're not broken in some unique, personal way. You're human. And you're walking around the planet with me, like me, carrying the same version of what the account of Genesis tells us, the diagnostic that we wrestle with. We cover up, we hide, and we blame the person beside us when things get hard. So what I love, and where we're going to turn then, great, thanks for the good news, Carlos. I already knew this. I didn't need you to spend 20 minutes of my life trying to break it down in a confusing way, talking about some theory you know nothing about, and then taking me to the first book of the Bible. I really maybe turn the corner then and just say this. But God does not only remedy this challenge we have, this brokenness. He doesn't just forgive our sin. He heals our ability to attach, and that is good news right there. So if we fast forward to the New Testament, we're going to look at Jesus. Here's what I mean. He heals our ability to attach. Yeah, like spiritually. I pray, he forgives me. Now, does that help you attach? Like becoming a follower of Jesus, does it fix everything? It doesn't, if you didn't know. You still will wrestle with the same challenges. You'll hold the same fears. Now, you walk with God through this, but he's given us a place to work through this dynamic. So Jesus is growing up. and he's teaching. People are drawn to him. And the crowds gather around. And you may not know this, but Jesus' family has some tension with him. They think he's a little bit out of his mind. Some of the things he says, some of the ways the crowds gather around him. And at one point, Jesus' parents, his mom, sends his brothers to go get him. They go get him out of public, bring him home. He's embarrassing the family. So the brothers get to the crowds. They can't get to Jesus because there's too many people. And so they start to pass it. Hey, can you send up Jesus? Time to come home. Right, that's an interesting dynamic. Hey, Jesus, it's time to come home. So he's up there, right? And then when the message gets to him, Matthew chapter 12, listen to what he says. He says, who's my mother? They say, your parents, your family wants you. And he says, who's my mother? Who are my brothers? And then he points to his disciples. And he says, here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and my sister and my mother. This can sound a little cold. Like Jesus is like, I don't need my family. I got work to do. I'm a wonderful Christian. I don't think he's doing that, though. I think he's establishing that God is putting on the earth something, someone. It's going to be the church, the ecclesia, the gathering of God's people, that is going to be a family that's not your biological family. Now, here's the good news in that. Right? Your biological family, you didn't get to choose. You didn't get a vote on what was modeled for you. I mean, my biological family, I love all my parents, my connections in that. My mom and dad weren't married. I was born on a hippie commune, as some of you know, complex relationship, father issues. I love my dad. Mom-son issues. I love my mom. Attachment theory plays all over my life, right? I didn't have a say in any of that. And yours might be harder, or some of you might be like, I've been like silver spoon in this thing. Life's been beautiful. I just had parents who loved the heck out of me and gave me everything I needed. But we both are invited to not be defined or limited by our biological family, but to belong to a new family where Jesus says, these are my brothers and these are my sisters. I think that's a big encounter Jesus shares, because if sin broke our ability to attach, God built a new family to heal it. And think about that. I'm actually saying the randos sitting, that's what I'm calling the people sitting next to you. The randos sitting next to you may very well become part of your life of healing and wholeness through serving together, through learning about God together, through a conversation that sparks up something that you come back to, through praying together. There's so many things that can happen. I know that can feel like a tall order. You might go, I already have my hands so full with the life in front of me, with my friendships, with my work, but none of those things are what God put here for us to reattach, to heal this wound we carry. Here's what I mean. Paul writes a letter to the church in Ephesus, and what he writes is so beautiful. Remember, adults who have become followers of Jesus, there's no Christian backstory for them. He says, God predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ in accordance with his pleasure and will. Now, number one, a lot of Christians fight about this verse for a long time. Predestined. God chooses. Do you have free will? I'm not going down any of that path right now. I just want to stay in the simple place of what this text is talking to us about. God predestined. I'm going to just want to break down a way to think about it for you. Some of you are going to die right now. Raise your hand if you have plans after church today. Let's just see. Okay, all of you have predetermined, predecided what you're doing after church today. If you were sitting next to someone that you came here with and one hand went up and the other didn't, improve your communication. So, just hold it right there. God decided, he predecided in advance. He said, hey, I've decided I'm going to adopt you. I'm going to make a family, and it's going to be full of adopted kids. And everyone gets an opportunity to be adopted. I've predecided. I've determined this gets to happen. Now, in the time this was written, adoption was different. It was not like through a foster adoption system. Some of you, that's your story, whether as a parent or as a child. Remember, upwards of 50 to 75% of the entire Roman Empire was in some form of slavery. So the adults all belonged to somebody. House servants, soldiers, all sorts of things, right? And adoption did not happen for children as like to bring them into your family and to create a new family. Adoption was largely for male servants or slaves when you had no heirs and you were going to die and you needed to pass your name and your legacy on. So when Paul writes this, the audience isn't hearing like the local adoption agency or a global adoption journey. They're hearing like the guy who was the servant and then one day was the owner of the houses and the land. And they're like, wow, he got a new name and everything changed. His whole identity changed. Adoption was a wholesale identity family change for an adult. That's when Paul says adoption. It doesn't carry less of the meaning or the emotion of what we might think of, or the importance. He says, God decided in advance that he's going to have a family. And all of us in our broken, cracked foundations and messed up attachments are going to get to be part of that family. Not after you turn out and you're like finally measure up to be in that family. Not once you've come to church enough or given enough or served enough, held enough babies, read enough Bible, done whatever checklist that might be required out there, right? No, before you were born, before you did anything good or anything terrible, he looked ahead and he pre-decided, I'm starting a family. Jesus will be my firstborn, and everybody can be adopted in. What he's talking about, to go back to attachment theory, is the process of becoming part of a family. And I want to leave you with this as we end. In holistic relationship healing, but also in our spiritual lives, it's a 3-step process we should consider. I've talked with you about this before. The first is atonement, the second is attunement, and the third is attachment. Here's why this is important. Because in your relationships or in your faith, if you skip past atonement and you just try to go to attunement, or you skip past atonement and attunement and you just try to attach, how does that work out for you? Like, how does that family member who keeps wounding you over and over and you keep trying to attach to them, how does that? It doesn't. It's just a repeat cycle of like heartbreak and pain and difficulty, and it can put you in vulnerable and dangerous situations and toxic environments, and it requires so much grit and resilience. So the order of operations is really important. And in your faith, the order of operations is really important. The first step is atonement, to healing and attachment. And atonement is when someone absorbs a cost so someone else can stay. Think of it like preparing a room, setting the table, opening the door, sending the invite, doing everything it takes and saying, I just want you here. And everything that needed to happen for you to be here, I took care of it. Atonement's a highly theological word, but it makes sense to us. We've received that type of gift from people at times. Paul says to the church in Rome, he really defines it like in this powerful nutshell. While we were God's enemies, we were reconciled to him through the death of his son. Jesus atones. He sets the table. He makes the bed. He prepares the room. He pays the cost. It all begins there, not with my hard work or my effort. So Jesus atones. That's kind of where it all begins, and then that opens the door for attunement. This is when someone makes it so you want to stay. Like, it's one thing to be told, I really want you here, but if you don't want that, something's off. You have to attune. Resonance, the noise and the vibrations and the dissonance that's so much part of our human relationships begins to come together into something beautiful. I mean, my life has been so impacted by men and women who, on the surface, I would have thought, I have nothing in common with them. I do not want, I don't even want to have a conversation. I shouldn't have, that's not you, no one in this room. But I don't even want to have a conversation with them. I don't have time for them. 20 years later, I'm like, they're one of the dearest people who has worked so deeply in my life and taught me so much about the nature of God and opened me up to really be fully known. It'll blow your mind when you lean into this process of letting God pave the way, and then you step in and you say, all right, I'm going to do the work of wanting to stay. But attunement requires, you can't bring like main character energy to the table for attunement. You have to serve. This is how I would describe that. In humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Not as a technique or a strategy, not as a way to build rapport before you close the deal, but because you have this keen awareness that God has made a family, and that family, guess what? You are a gift to that family and in that family, but so are you, and so are you, and we come together. And we go, how do I come together? You play French horn and I don't. How are we going to do this? I was trying to choose something innocuous there. Well, in humility, I'm going to value you above myself. I'm not going to look to my own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. This is the opposite of absolutely everything going on in the world right now. It's the opposite of it. There's no quarter between the two. Sometimes in humility, occasionally I'll value you when you agree with me. I mean, there's a challenge. The challenge that Jesus invites us into is gritty and it's real. And then the gift of attachment. It's when it becomes safe to stay. It's when you want to stay. There's a beautiful text in Ephesians. It almost reads like a poem. And it's Paul just talking to this church, this family, about what they found. He says, I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long, how high and deep is the love of Christ. Rooted and established in love. That's a picture of secure attachment. So the invitation for us, when we say we are the church, this is just a really long, complicated way to say we're a family where you get to heal. So I want to give you a moment as you consider that belonging is something that happens to you by participating in it. There's no call to action here. Go do this thing. Go sign up for this thing. Just families buy in to each other. So I'd like you to think on this. What did you once learn about love, about attachment, about connection that Jesus might want to unlearn you or unteach you? Give you a moment to pray on that, and then we're going to come and share communion together.